actually could read and speak 4 different languages. I had lots of books, and I even designed my own house, a place called Monticello, which means small mountain. It's a very famous building, and it's still there now, and you can see it if you go back to Virginia when I get done, okay? When the war first started, and the colonists, you guys saw and did your kind of a reproduction of the Tea Party, and when all of that started, I got involved in politics. I was involved in the politics of they called it the House of Burgess in Virginia, which was like a state assembly we have now. I got involved in politics even more, and I was very interested in helping with the colonists who were fighting the British. And when they finally decided it was time to leave, because all the Americans were British citizens. They were citizens of Britain.
Well, they weren't really citizens per se.
Yeah, they were.
They were.
They were,
What do
in
you mean?
fact.
We didn't get the rights of
They didn't
They
get
didn't
the
get
rights
the,
of
your
citizens.
rights. They didn't get the right, and that was what the problem was. They were citizens, but they didn't have any representation in the British Parliament. So laws were being passed and taxes were being passed, but citizens of the United States, of what was then the states, they were actually colonies, didn't have any representation. They didn't get any say about what was going to happen to them. So they got 4 or 5 of us together and said, we'd like you to draft something, a declaration of independence. And of the people that were there, I was the youngest. I was only 33. Most of them were older. So guess who got to do the drafting? The youngest. And of course, one of the reasons was that having spoken 4 languages and reading 4 languages and being very interested in reading and all the different famous books and philosophers of the time, they said that I might be very good at drafting a Declaration of Independence. And in fact, that's what I did. Can't wait till Don that. It's really important. Okay, go.
Could you say the name of the committee of 6 that made the Declaration of Independence?
I don't really remember the name of it. I don't think it had a name. It was just a committee.
Yeah, there was 6 people. It was
Yeah, but I don't know that it had a special name.
I think there's Ben Franklin,
James Madison.
James Madison, Thomas Jefferson,
Adams.
John Adams, maybe Sam Adams, and I know another person who is not very well known was on the committee. His name was Roger Sherman.
Right, from Rhode Island.
Oh, you're right.
No, not Rhode Island, Connecticut.
You sure?
Yes, I was up in Portland. I went to school, and we had a unit on colonial times, and he was even my identity.
Okay, Sammy, I'm going to interrupt a minute. For them to share their wealth of information, we have to listen to them, okay? Thank you.
Well, after I drafted the Declaration of Independence, it was reviewed and gone through many times by the members of the Continental Congress, actually. And finally it was adopted, and that was the document that actually said, Great Britain, we are going to be an independent country. We're not going to be British citizens anymore. After that came the Revolutionary War. Actually, the war was going on at the time that was drafted. It had been going on about a year. Later on, during the war, I never really was in the war. I was sent to France to help negotiate and help France become an ally, a friend of the colony, because they didn't like Great Britain either, the French. And we were successful at that. Benjamin Franklin was there at the same time I was. And that was one of our jobs. Later on, I was an ambassador to France, and I was an ambassador to England. I was gone a lot of the time. My wife had 6 children, and only 2 of them lived. And she died when she was only 33 years old. I lost my wife and most all of my family, all the time, and much of it while I was gone in different countries, working for the United States, or what was then the United States. After the war, you know that, of course, George Washington was our first president, and John Adams was the second president. And when John Adams ran for president, I ran against him. And I lost to John Adams. He was the second president of the United States, and I lost by 3 electoral votes. Just barely. But I did lose. That made me the vice president. So I was the vice president when John Adams was president. John Adams ran for president a second time, and I ran against him again, and that time I won. And I became the 3rd president of the United States. And some of the things that I did that were pretty important was one of them was called the Louisiana Purchase. And in Europe, a man named Napoleon was having lots of wars and fighting the English and fighting lots of other people as well, many other countries. But he was spending lots and lots of money for his wars, and he wanted money. And I ended up buying what they called the Louisiana Purchase from France. And what that did, that's most of the land from the southern East Coast over to the Mississippi River. It actually made the colonies, the United States, more than twice as big as it was when I became president. The other thing I did in 1804 was I sent the Lewis and Clark expedition. They were called the Corps of Discovery. And they came all the way up the Missouri River, across the Rocky Mountains, and came to Oregon. And you can go to Fort Clatsop, which is a place right here in Oregon, right near Astoria, where the Lewis and Clark expedition wintered over. And that was what allowed the United States to claim much of the West, and particularly the place where we live in Oregon, Washington, Montana. Those states were all claimed by the United States due to the expedition that I sent. Later on, after I was done being president, I went back to my farm, because I always liked the farm, and I liked reading, I liked running my farm. And I was an advisor lots of times to presidents and to other famous people in our country. But in 1826, I died. I was 83 years old. And I died on the same day that John Adams, the man whom I had been vice president for, on the same day that he died, and that was the 4th of July, 50 years after I wrote the Declaration of Independence.